My path with Michelle has crossed on many, many occasions. She's one of the brightest ladies in our industry. She's an actuary by profession. She's held some of the most senior positions in major intermediaries, major life companies, and here she is today, probably thinking I can put my feet up just over a year ago when George Osborne announced that all the people can get access to their pension pots. So as Michelle will explain, it's probably been a very busy 15 months for her. She certainly isn't putting her feet up, I can assure you. She's one of the most respected people in our industry. So can I welcome Michelle to the stage, and can I also thank all of you for being here, and I hope you get a lot of benefit. She'll speak for about 30 minutes, and then there's plenty of times for questions. So once again, Michelle, lovely to see you, and have a wonderful presentation.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming to listen to what has been an incredible 15 months, certainly in my career in pensions, where we've really started to get a huge amount of customers getting engaged with their pensions. And that's the story I'm going to tell you about today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Pensions Advisory Service, who we are and what we do. I'll then talk about our experience to date, and in particularly over the last 5 months from when the pension reforms came in at the beginning of April. I'm then going to describe what we do at the Pensions Advisory Service and the guidance that we give customers so that you've got an understanding of how that fits with the services that you're offering customers. I'll then describe PensionWise and give you a few anecdotes about our experience of people coming to us and having PensionWise appointments and some of the insights we've had. And then I'm just going to finish off to speak about what I think the issues and opportunities are in the market, and hopefully we can have some more questions and discussions around that. But let me just start off with the Pensions Advisory Service. Now, the Pensions Advisory Service actually started off as an organisation that a number of you may have remembered the name of as OPAS 32 years ago. And it was set up by a very clever lady who said nobody should have to make a pension decision by themselves. And she set up a charity where pensions experts would help your questions. In those days it was a purely volunteering organisation, but today we're part of the DWP funding family and we receive funding from them. We've got one remit, so the DWP give me some money and they say there's one thing you have to do, and that is help people with their pensions questions and issues. As I say that, it's people, so our core market is the members of pension schemes and people who've got private pensions. We don't look after companies. We have 2 services. The first one is a helpline, which we answer telephone, online inquiries and web chat. And that just is open between 9 and 5 every day. And on Tuesday evenings, we also open it up for web chat and people ask us questions. And the second service we have is a dispute mediation service. So where things go wrong, and unfortunately they do, we've got a team of people who will actually mediate between the scheme and provider and the member to try and get to a fair settlement. So what does that actually mean? What do we really do? Well, I guess pensions has got 2 massive clashing cultures. On the one hand, we've got history, we've got legacy, we've got complexity, all of which is familiar to those of us that work in the industry, and particularly for those of us that work in pensions every day. At the other side, we've got customers who are increasingly wanting for quick answers, instant solutions, and wanting to do things absolutely immediately. Now, a lot of people say, well, the answer surely is we educate the customers. But if I was educated about pensions, I'd have learnt about defined benefit schemes. I don't have any defined benefit schemes. So what actually customers need is at the point when it becomes pertinent to them, either at retirement, either at death or at divorce, they need some help in being able to understand what sort of pension they've got. Up here I've got a few examples just to show the sorts of questions that we get this is from our online inquiries. My particular favourite was a gentleman who sent an online inquiry to us, and he said, I've got a pension scheme, I'm coming up to my retirement in about 6 months' time, and I've just been contacted by the administrator, and he says, do I want an annuity? I don't think I do, because I've already got a pension. So that's the gap between where we are in our little financial services bubble and where the customers quite often are in their understanding of what pension they've got. The other big issue that we have that comes through on our helpline is we are very sensitive to the media. So if the media run any story about pensions, it increases the volumes of calls that we get considerably the next day. But of course, when the media run a story, they run the headlines. So last March, when George Osborne stood up and made his announcements about what was happening in the budget, the very next day people phoned us up and said, how can I do it? And what they also found really difficult to understand is when they went to their providers and their schemes and said, I want to do it, I want to cash in my pension fund, they found it really difficult when their scheme said, oh no, you can't do it with our scheme. I heard it on the BBC and my scheme says no, who's wrong? That's how customers actually see it. Someone must be wrong, somebody must be cheating me out of what is my right. And of course, as you can imagine right now, that has been exacerbated because the freedom and choice has not been like taking your pension fund as a bank account. There are a number of steps that we understand you have to go through, but customers misunderstand and have been led to believe that they were just going to be able to cash in their pension fund either in one lump or in lots of little lumps. What they didn't realise is actually they may have to move and take a number of steps in order to get to that. This is our experience. So in 2013-2014, we looked after 76,000 customers. Last year in 2014-2015, we looked after 103,000 customers. And my staff told me they couldn't possibly do any more work than they were doing last year. And you can see what's happened this year with the blue lines. So up until the end of August, this just shows the first quarter, but up until the end of August, there were over 70,000 customers contacted the Pensions Advisory Service, a lot of them about the new reforms, but also the news about pensions constantly being in the media does create other people phoning up to say, oh, by the way, I think I've got a question completely unrelated to cashing in my benefit, but I just keep reading about pensions and so I wanted to ask my question. If we carry on with these sorts of numbers, and certainly August was unprecedented demand for August when we thought everybody would be on holiday. We were dealing with, last year we dealt with about 320 calls a day in August. This year we were dealing with just short of 400 calls a day. So even during the summer break, people were calling up. If we carry on this way, we think we'll look after about 150,000 customers this year. My dream come true. My long history in the industry, which John talked about, is, I used to stand up in canteens where the finance director kicked 2 or 3 people into the canteen to come and listen to my pension presentation. And so to see this wind of change, I think is fantastic. But I am really aware that us dealing with 150,000 customers may be fantastic for us and where we've come from, but it's only a very, very small part of the population. And we as an industry have still got a huge amount to do to get people to talk to us about their issues. I guess in contrast, particularly for those of you who are mortgage advisors, us pensions advisors have spent years in the wilderness not being invited to dinner parties, whereas you've always had a much easier ride on that because, of course, the emotion of buying a house is you can be the most popular people and when you're actually putting together people's dreams of buying a house. Well, we're only just experiencing that in the pensions world. We've started to be invited to dinner parties and drinks party, and people saying, oh, by the way, can I talk to you about the pensions? So it's only just started for us and we're quite excited. So let me just talk about what we do in guidance. My history, I was an advisor, an IFA for 20 years, dealing mainly with small company pension schemes. So I have seen the other side of the fence of being an advisor. And what we do in guidance has some similarities, but there are some very big differences. But I do think that we, if you like, are the starters to the main course that IFAs deliver in the work that they do. We get people started. We are a public service and we are free at the point of use. And our our ambition is to try and get customers to understand the sorts of things they need to consider. We give people the questions that they should be asking themselves or other people in order that they make informed decisions with their pension pot. We have too many customers that come to us having received their packs from insurance companies or from pension schemes, and they come to us and say, I've got my pack, can you tell me how I buy an annuity or how I go into drawdown? And the job that we quite often do is unpick them and get them to leave our service with more questions than perhaps when they first arrived. But we think that's really useful because they are making a big decision that is going to impact them for the rest of their lives. And for a lot of people, we're the people that helps them understand what they don't know. And as a result of speaking to us, they may go and take further guidance service, they may go and get further information, or some of them will go and get advice as a result of speaking to us. What we don't do is we do not provide a definitive course of action. So we give people the options, and for a lot of people, when we've given them the options, they'll then make the decision that they can do it themselves. But some of them will also turn around and go, gosh, this is a big decision. And most importantly, what I do and how I act next could make a difference. Again, our experience is a lot of people convince themselves, I'll just do what the existing insurance company have given me to do. It probably won't make a difference, but it's just too hard, it's just too complicated, and it's a bit too scary to talk to one of those advisors, so I'm just going to do it. Whereas I think what we can help people realise is it does make a big difference, and advice can add value, and that's part of what we deliver up as guidance. So as John said, as from April of this year, we were awarded the contract, so the new part of my business is the delivery of the telephony channel for PensionWise. So I just want to talk you through exactly how PensionWise works and also what we actually deliver in PensionWise. First off, it's really important, and there's quite a lot of misquotes about PensionWise in the press. It's really important to remember that the parliamentary permissions for PensionWise is only for people with defined contribution pensions, and it's only for people who are in close proximity of being able to make a retirement decision. So we can only talk to people who are over 50 and deliver a PensionWise appointment to them. If they don't fit those criteria, we can talk to them in our core business, but PensionWise is not funded to deliver advice, for example, on guidance on pensions and divorce. So it's got a very tight criteria of what we do. And for people in the process of making the decision, it is a legal requirement for a scheme or a provider to actually signpost them to go and have a PensionWise appointment. And you've probably heard that providers must do that, and if people don't have an appointment, there is a second line of defence for the providers to warn them what they may be missing out of. Just be interesting, the process for making a PensionWise appointment is you first of all book an appointment, and then you have the appointment. When you book the appointment, we check your eligibility, and when you have the appointment, we check your eligibility. What do you think the failure rate is on the second gate of checking eligibility of, are you eligible for a PensionWise appointment? Sorry? 10%? Yeah, it's 10%. So, and obviously what most people fail on is they don't know whether they've got a defined contribution pension pot or not. Our longest PensionWise appointment lasted for over half an hour before the guider actually found out that the lady did not have a defined contribution scheme, she had a defined benefit scheme, but she kept saying, my pot is worth 420,000, because her defined benefit scheme had given her the lifetime allowance equivalent. And so that was quite helpful information. But for a customer who doesn't know the difference between a defined benefit and a defined contribution, it just confused her. And when we kept saying to her, have you got a pension pot? She kept saying, yes, no, it's worth 420,000. And it was only when she told us the name of the scheme that we actually found out she had a defined benefit scheme. So the process for booking an appointment, and for those of you that have seen the adverts that are going out at the moment, is there is a contact centre. We don't run it, but there's a contact centre for customers to call, and they can either book an appointment directly with us at the contact centre, or they'll be given a telephone number for Sitton's advice if they want a face-to-face appointment. When they book the appointment, as I said, they will check the eligibility. Appointments, originally we were getting people to wait 2 weeks. We've actually reduced that down to say we will give appointments within 2 days. But in fact, if somebody needs an urgent appointment, we can do them quicker. But of course, if somebody just wants to ask one question, that's not for pension-wise, that would come through into our core business. When they come in through an appointment, we actually do 5 things. And the 5 sections of the appointment is, first off, you'll be very familiar, we have to do the data protection and tell them the call will be recorded. The second thing we do is we manage their expectations about what will happen during the call. We tell them that we'll be asking them personal questions, and the more they tell us, the more we can help them. And we also tell them in the second part of the appointment, it will probably last about 45 minutes. Unfortunately, at the moment, there is an element that will say, oh, I haven't got 45 minutes. Could you just do it in 10? Now, just think about the mismatch that we have. You know, the industry was saying to me, how can you do it in 45 minutes? It's going to take at least an hour and a half. And customers walking down the street are saying, I'm not hanging around for 45 minutes talking to some pensions geek. Can you just sort it out in 10? So again, we've got a massive job to try and encourage people to take up the guidance. You know, it's for you that have got customers that are taking your advice. They've already, you know, if you like, understood that, and they invest time with you every year in telling you about their personal circumstances. But we know that's only a very tiny part of the population. Most of the people walking down this street are actually just gliding through their finances, completely oblivious to the fact that either through guidance or advice, we can do something to help them be in a better financial position. The third section of the appointment is the biggest part of the appointment, and this is where we talk to people about their retirement plans. And that ranges from asking them what pensions they've got, what other savings they've got, and if you like, the factual data, to asking them questions about themselves, you know, their health, their dependents, you know, whether they're carrying on working, etc. Again, things that are really obvious to us. But you know, we have to get people and encourage people to give us that information and explain to them why it's got a purpose in the pensions conversation. The fourth section is the 5 retirement options that we describe. We go through for every appointment, every single option, but we start off and we do it relatively quickly, and then we say to the customer, which of those would you like us to go through in more detail? And they will select those options that they think are most relevant to them. And we will also at that point, because I do have pensions experts working for me, we will do a match. So if somebody has missed out an option which we think is pertinent to their personal situation, we will encourage them to talk about that option as well. And we'll go through the options in more detail with them and the pros and cons and the things they should be thinking about. So that's what we do. Again, a lot of people will say to us, could I just ask one question? And it's quite a job that we're having to do at the moment to say, we would really encourage you not just to talk about, you know, the tax on cashing in your pension, but understand the other options as well. And if we can get them to talk, quite often a number of people who think they want to cash in their pension, actually the drawdown option is better for them. And then finally, we just close it off. Unfortunately, we have to talk about pension scams, and we also tell them that they'll be getting an output document at the end of the appointment that reminds them of everything we've told them. I say unfortunately we have to talk about pension scams, not because I don't want to talk about pension scams, but it's just a nasty part of the industry that is on the rise, and obviously trying to warn people about that is our job. These are the 5 retirement options. So the way we describe them is that, first of all, is even if you've got a pack, you don't have to take your money. If you're not retiring, don't take your money. So in my career, I've got a retirement age of 60, I've got a retirement age of 65 on another pack, and then one employer gave me a retirement age of 63 because he couldn't make up his mind. And so I've got a whole mishmash of retirement ages. But again, I think we take it for granted that if we don't need the money, we'll just keep the pension policy rolling on. A lot of people don't realise that, and a lot of people do actually access their pension pot whilst they're still working, even though they don't need the money. So that's the first option. The three in the middle: buy an annuity, draw down, and cashing in your pension pot. And at the end, we also tell them that they can mix and match between the different options. So what's it been like since April? Well, what it hasn't been like is we haven't had masses of people phoning us up about Lamborghinis. If those calls happen, they come through to me, and they haven't happened. It's actually been a very British affair, very staid, and people that have phoned us up are really thinking about the options they've got to make. Now, I do realise that, if you like, they have self-selected themselves to have the guidance sessions, so I suppose not surprising, therefore, that they have taken a little bit more time in thinking through the options. If you look at the data coming out from the ABI and also from all of the individual providers, Scottish Widows and Standard Life, it's really clear that the cashing in has been focused on people with very small pots, pots sub 5,000, and those sorts of people have taken the opportunity to cash in their pension pots. In fact, there have been a number of people who have cashed in their pension pots that could have actually done it before April, but of course the publicity around April meant they all of a sudden decided that they were going to do something with that £2,000 or £3,000 that was sitting in a pot that they'd only had going for a couple of years. However, it's also true to say that a lot of the people that have come to us are not retiring. So there's a lot of tidying up going on. So one of the pieces of evidence we keep giving to the Treasury, the DWP and the FCA is the experience we've had over the last 5 months is not necessarily indicative of what will happen over the next 2 or 3 years, because there has been people just tidying up odds and ends. Most people we talk to have a defined benefit scheme as well. So again, this isn't their primary retirement benefit. And we say that most people, again, are well prepared for the conversation. However, and this comes back to the whole purpose of guidance and the whole purpose of the Pensions Advisory Service, you can be really well versed on the retirement options. What is really difficult for people to get to grips with is where their money is coming from. And that's, I think, one of the biggest areas that we cover in PensionWise is just explaining to them, because their money sits in a Section 32 plan or an old defined contributions scheme, money purchase scheme with their employer, what they do next and their options are slightly different to other plans, say, for example, a brand new modern personal pension plan. When people are talking about cashing in their pension fund, again, I know people have self-selected us for guidance, but we do say, what are your plans with the money? The reason we say that is not because we're nosy, although we may be nosy, but it's just to try and understand, is that the right option for them, or would drawdown be just as suitable? And the biggest reason that they say that they're cashing in their pension pot is to pay off some of their mortgage or to put a deposit down for their children. So again, they are financially astute decisions that they may be making in respect to their money. It's not just, I'm cashing it in and I'm just going to fritter the money away. And when we talk about scams to people, there is a recognition, and more people are saying to us, oh, I did get one of those phone calls. However, there is also the people are still drawn in by some of the particularly bricks and mortar offers that are being made to people, because we're British. We love property, and I think the biggest example we had of that on one of our PensionWise appointments was a gentleman who phoned us up. We went all the way through the appointment. He was obviously very keen on cashing in his pension pot. We talked about all the various options, and when we asked the question, why do you want to cash in your pension pot? He said, well, actually, I've only just come back from Cape Verde because I've been there for the weekend to look at a property development. And we said, who took you there? And he said, a property company. And so, you know, people are still taken in, if you like, with that timeshare type behaviour. And he'd gone out, and the question he asked us, again, you know, quite difficult for us to understand in financial services, but he turned around to us at the end of the call and he says, how do I say no to them? And again, I think we take for granted that we know how to say no to people, we know about our rights, we know about cooling off, and we shouldn't underestimate how many people actually find it really difficult to say no. In fact, we had one lovely gentleman that was an online inquiry, and he came to us and said he thought he had been scammed, and he gave us the details, and we said, you know, it didn't look good, these are the things he should do, and he should definitely cancel the courier tomorrow until he'd done that. And he then sent us another letter to say, thank you very much, I have cancelled the courier for tomorrow. I think I was quite rude to him. And we're saying they're just about to cheat you out of your money, and he was concerned about being rude to them. So quite lovely on his part, but just goes to show these scammers are really high pressure tactics. In fact, somebody was telling me yesterday, a scheme administrator, she'd got a member who was wanting to put his money in a pension scheme that she didn't recognise. So she phoned up the telephone number, and they said, "Who are you?" Not hello, can I help you? Not the name of the company. They just said, who are you? And the whole basis, as she said, is they don't usually get inbound calls. All of their activity is outbound cold calling. I won't go through all of these top questions, but just to give you a few flavours of the sort of themes we get. A lot of lack of knowledge of the plans they're coming from. So when we ask people about, have you got a special feature, have you got a guaranteed annuity rate, we were saying that when we first started PensionWise, and the answer was usually no. We now say, when did you take out your policy and who's it with? We think you may have a guaranteed annuity rate, go and ask that question. Because of course the default of all of us as human beings, if somebody asks us a question and we don't know the answer, our default behaviour is to say no, rather than admitting that you don't know the answer. So we've slightly changed, you know, the way we ask the questions to make sure we get the right answers. The second thing, which the reasons for putting up these questions, is a lot of people are still anchored in the old rules. So we still get a lot of people saying, I only want to take 25% of my fund as cash sum. So it takes quite a long time to change behaviours, and so they sort of say, you know, we sort of say only 25%, but you know, you can take 20%, you know, you can take 10%, or you could take 30, or you could take 40. So culture takes a lot longer to change than actual rules take to change. The other one that is worth mentioning to you is the issue about advice. We're getting this a lot on our core helpline, as well as on PensionWise, is that a number of people are either being required because of their provider, or they are being required under regulation to go and get financial advice. Now, the first thing that a slight alarm bell, you know, rings in my head is that I use those words quite carefully, is they're being told to do something, which is really unfortunate, because of course it's not about, you know, going to take advice because of the value it would add, but there's quite a big mindset out there at the moment about, I'm having to do it. The second issue is when they go and try and get advice, people are struggling to find advisors that will take on the cases. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. Sometimes the cases are quite small, and as an advisor, you've got the right to say, that's not my business model, I don't deal with customers like that. And we don't have a very good matching service between customer needs and advisors, and I think as an industry, we really need to work on that. And the second area is the sorts of customers I'm now seeing in my current job, compared with the jobs when I was an IFA, is a different type of customer. And I think a lot of customers are struggling because in the post-retail distribution review world, a lot of advisor models is the full holistic financial planning job. And that's quite a big journey for somebody to go on, from never having taken advice, never having had friends and family who've been seeing financial advisors, to all of a sudden put down quite a considerable amount of money to go and have a full financial plan job done. And it's quite a big commitment. And I do wonder, as an industry, whether we need to have a few sort of starters for 10 to get people to understand how advice can add value. Because otherwise, I think people are struggling to see how it can. And obviously, a lot of the population don't have anything to hang their hat on to say, yes, I know it's happened because my friend did it. So just finally, and to wrap up, before we take some questions, is where do I see the issues and opportunities? Well, these are the issues that I see where I think we need to get a lot smarter in the industry. The first one is over the language that we use. It turns a lot of people off. And despite the fact that most of the pensions industry were, nose to the grindstone, working really hard, we still come up with crazy words for fads, flexi access drawdown, UF plus for the other type of drawdown. And customers really struggle with that. It's not so much that they struggle with the words, and in fact I had a provider came and did a site visit on Monday, and they said to me, when they listened into some pension-wise calls, they said to me, "You use jargon?" And I said, "Yes, no, we use jargon." And they said, "Well, why do you do that? We thought it would all be easy to understand language." And I said, "But if I didn't say UF plus, where would the customer go after me? Because I'm not an end point. I don't give anybody a definitive course of action. I don't set up an UF plus for somebody, and unless I say those words to the customer, when he goes out and speaks to a provider to say, do you offer this on your pension contract, they wouldn't be able to match it up. And so, we do need to make sure, and so then the provider turned around to me and said, "Oh, but we don't call ours UF plus." And I thought, so how's the customer going to deal with all of us using different language? The second one is about accessibility. And there's a number of things about the whole access issues that we have as an industry. The easiest question we get on our online inquiries is people writing to us to say, my circumstances have changed, I've become self-employed, or something's happened, and I need to set up a pension. It is the hardest question for us to answer. Apart from saying the obvious of check with your employers to see whether he's got a pension scheme, if they're self-employed, how do you help somebody through that journey? It's a really difficult question to answer. And so I think we need to become a lot more accessible as an industry. And like I said, I've already talked about how do we get people to access advice. I think that's still a very big job to do. There's obviously the financial advice market review going on. But I also hope that the industry will also start putting forward some more solutions for customers, and we will create better matching between that. And finally, how do we encourage people to actually take guidance on their pension and other financial matters? As I said, a lot of people at the moment aren't even prepared to give 45 minutes up to make decisions that are going to affect the rest of their life. So that says to me, as an industry, people still find us unapproachable, difficult, worried, think they're going to feel stupid if they talk to us. So there's a really big piece of work to do there. So the opportunity, more people are talking about pensions. Not enough, not often enough, but it's a great start. More people are reviewing their perceptions on pensions, which is fantastic. So it's not all negative now, and so we should be building on that. And of course, there are more people with pensions because of automatic enrolment. So I think we've got a real opportunity as an industry, and I do believe it's the industry that should lead it, as well as just waiting for the government to come out with their market reviews, for people to save more for their retirement, choose the options that are appropriate to them, and access help, not just at the end, and not just when they need the money, but throughout. Like I said, we're only about getting people started. We don't do the final journey. And I think the key thing, and the reasons why we're really keen and really pleased when people invite us to speak at events like this, is we all need to work together. There needs to be a much smoother customer journey between the providers and schemes who provide the information, organisations like us that give guidance, and it out into the advice community that provides recommendations and ultimately can transact and buy product for the customer. We all need to work much closer together. There's certainly enough customers out there who want all of our help, but I think what we need to be better at is helping the customers move from one to the other in their journey. So thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you very much.